just in case. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Azure podcast. Today is September 8th. This is episode number 393. We're going to be talking about improving time to mitigation with Scott Hitch from the Azure Customer Experience team. Sajid's here, Kendall's here, and Kale is here as well. And obviously, we'll get to Scott in just a little bit. So news, who's got some news? There's a whole bunch of things out there today, I saw.
Yeah, I have one, Evan, and this is about the app service, the public tenant version of app services, which I think is probably one of our most popular services in Azure. And until today, let me first say that an app service, as you know, resides in a plan, right? An app service plan. So your app service is part of a plan, and the plan is essentially the underlying virtual machine that is hosting your app service. And until today, you couldn't really control where that underlying VM or VMs get deployed. In other words, you couldn't say, I wanted to spread across multiple zones in a particular region to get that high availability. And now you can't. So the latest feature, which I think is very, very interesting, especially to enterprise customers who want that high availability, you can now, as long as you have more than 3 or a multiple of 3 in terms of the underlying instances in the plan, you can set the flag, and then that will spread it across all of the 3 zones in a particular region and give you that high availability. If you take that feature and add it to the other services in Azure that also support multiple zones, for example, blob storage, Key Vault, all the other things that we support. I don't know if Key Vault does actually, so I shouldn't have said that, but definitely blob storage and other services that support availability zones. You can now get the high availability across the board, right, from the front to the back, including the database, AKS clusters, and what have you. And so I think this is a feature that has long been wanted, and I'm sure our customers are going to look forward to this.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. The one that jumped out at me, actually 2 that I'll mention real quick. One of them, we actually had Jerry Steele on the show. I want to say it's just a couple months back, but it may be longer than that now, to talk about VMSS Flex orchestration. And we've now added automatic scaling and a whole bunch of other features to that. And then this next one is massive. We now have capacity, on-demand capacity reservations, right? So we've had reserved instances for a while, which is basically if you pay us some money up front, we cut you a break, and then you can consume that over time. This capacity reservation says now you can reserve the actual compute cores and other resources, and we guarantee they're there for the duration of that reservation. And it's pay as you go. So you can sort of turn it on or off, as you need to. Like, hey, this weekend I got something big, I want to turn this on, and then after the weekend you turn it off. This sort of solves the underlying problem of it right now. While generally there is always enough capacity underneath, there's lots of constraints and scenarios where we try and you spin up the VM, and for a brief time period that fails because we don't have the resources on that cluster or that SKU. Retry generally works, but this, plus or minus 50 minutes might really matter to you if you got some time sensitive things. So I've already got an email out to the PM. We'll definitely have them on the show to talk about this.
And Evan, I was just wondering on that, when you do that reservation of the capacity, it'll also check your quotas, as you know, it'll check to make sure that you have enough quota in your subscription. And so, in case you do run it, because otherwise people only find that out when they want to scale up. Oh, I don't have enough quotas. I got to, put in the support ticket and whatnot. And now here, you'll know up front that, hey, we need to do that, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, it's sort of, because basically it looks like we actually go reserve. We create a virtual machine for you. And, it's sitting there ready for you to use. So it's an interesting way that we solve the problem. Again, we'll have a whole show on this at a later date. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Kendall.
Yeah, it's just one more, and I'm not gonna lie, I think this is a big feature, but I'm definitely not like a networking person by trade, so I'm sure y'all will have some more insight on this. But essentially, private endpoint now supports user-defined routes. That's in public preview, so just keep that in mind. So essentially, because this is now available, users can apply custom routes to traffic that's going to the private endpoint with a wider subnet range. So I think before NSGs and UDRs weren't supported for private endpoint. So I think this will be good, at least setting network policy that can kind of add additional configuration for how that service makes a call to the private endpoint. So I will say private endpoints are something that I think all customers are using right now. And so I'm learning a lot about the networking stuff, just making private endpoint work with a variety of different services. So this is something I'm definitely going to dig deeper into.
Sounds great. Cool. Yeah, no, it's a nice feature. Yeah. So, okay. So at this point, let's get Scott. Scott, if you could introduce yourself and tell us what you do for Microsoft. It's your role is a little different than a lot of other people that we've had on the show. So tell us what you do.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. As you said, my name is Scott Hitch, and I'm a program manager as part of Azure and the Azure Customer Experience team specifically. And I look after a lot of Microsoft Azure's investments in our customer support experience. And when I say support, I mean everything from how can I resolve this issue as a customer to how can Microsoft help customers resolve this issue, and also other related concepts like how can you be sure you're following best practices for Azure. And we have a product called Azure Advisor that your audience is probably familiar with. And how can I stay up to date on any Azure system outages that might be impacting me? My team looks after that as well. So we have a suite of kind of related products. Some of them our customers might see, and some of them are more things that we use internally. But what ties them all together is they're all about helping our customers avoid problems as much as possible, or when they do run into problems, making sure that they can get those problems resolved as quickly as possible so they can get back to their business or what they want to be doing instead of focusing on a problem.
Yeah, and the reason I invited Scott on is because we've had a lot of PMs and devs on that ship SQL MI or ship VMSS Flex orchestration. This the stuff that a lot of the stuff that Scott's team owns, either people don't know they're using, right? Things like the deflection content that you guys do, or the service notifications that y'all manage. But also things that me as a, I live in the sport world, nobody ever talks to me when they're having a good day. But some of the tooling that you guys ship is what actually enables me to be more productive at my job. That to me, that's actually an interesting one because customers will never ever see it or touch it, but it influences every interaction they have with support. Can you sort of talk about what Azure Support Center is and the need that it fills for us internally?
Well, yeah, I mean, Evan, I think you made a great point. Our customers, they probably shouldn't think a lot about what Azure does to help them when there's a problem. But when we think about it, it's something that's actually really important for us, and so we do invest a lot in it. And we don't spend a lot of time talking about it externally to customers because we prefer to talk about the things that are going to solve their next problem or enable them to achieve their next business goal. But we absolutely believe that it's a top priority for Azure to be there for our customers whenever anything goes wrong. And so, the way we've approached that, and we've been working on this for a long time, is we want our customers to have consistently good service for all of Azure. And more than that, our goal is for that service, that customer service, to be perfect every time. Now, Azure is a really big cloud platform with hundreds of external service offerings and thousands of employees around the world that work together to make that happen. And so part of the trick in the way we think about the world is, how do we build an extensible platform from within Azure that is part of Azure that makes our products supportable by default, so that the product teams that are working on what they know best, they can focus on that, and then other folks like myself who are experts on customer service, we sort of teach them and show them and make it easy for them to create by default a supportable service. And so that is kind of the world that we live in. And honestly, a good day for us is when no one's thinking about what we do.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a big piece that I actually forgot about when we were talking, about getting you on the show, which is, not only do you guys build the platforms to enable some of this stuff, but you even build, the broader, team even covers the best practices for how support teams should do this.
Yeah. Well, do you mean best practices for customers or support teams?
It's actually both. You guys own pieces of both of those.
Yeah. Well, for our customers, we have a feature of Azure called Azure Advisor, and it's easy to access in the Azure portal. If you haven't used it, just type the word advisor in the search bar up top, and you'll get there. And it's free. It's available to everyone. It has personalized recommendations for you across a broad number of categories, whether that's to help you improve your security, your operational excellence, reduce your cost, or just comply with other best practices. And they're all personalized for you, and it's all free. And we've made it free because we want to make sure everyone has that available. And the cool thing is what we do is, there's not one group of folks within Azure that have a center of knowledge on what all those recommendations should be. And so, any team in Azure, in fact, every team is actually encouraged to think about what recommendations they can provide their customers. And we make it really easy for them to add new recommendations. So that's what we do to make it easily internally. And then as a result, our customers just get new and better recommendations all the time.
Yeah, along with that, Scott, I think just one piece of feedback from out in the field with the customers before, that feature of like improving the cost, like to say, hey, you got extra stuff running here, you should kind of shut that down. I mean, that's obviously not the exact verbiage, but like that, they're like totally impressed, right? Because
you got positive feedback. I was not worried with you.
No, positive. It's like they don't get that same experience, and I'm not dumping on other cloud vendors, but they said that's kind of unique to Azure. I can tell you that. Like, I haven't seen that before. Like, that would help me optimize my costs at that level. So it's awesome. Like, you're actually like nagging me to make things more efficient.
Yeah, and I'll say, that wasn't something that was difficult for us to do for our customers. We didn't have to overcome internal resistance or question about that. Honestly, it's just all about helping customers be successful with Azure. And if that means helping them save a little money, I think they'll appreciate that. And I think that's good for us, and it's good for them as well.
So Scott, yeah, thanks. This is great. It's awesome to hear about Azure Advisor. I know that's something that's integrated into a lot of the offerings that I work with customers on. And I think you kind of alluded to this, but essentially, how does that process work? It's the individual product group teams that decide, hey, based on some of the data we're seeing, these are areas where we want to service things up, and then you just provide a platform through which they can do that. Is that how that process typically works?
Yeah, exactly. And we have you can imagine through the the life cycle of building an Azure service. Azure has invested in a lot of ways to help educate every team about hey, you need to do these things. For example, to be secure, you need to do these things. To be accessible, you need to do these things. To meet our other customer promises, you need to do these things. And so Advisor is just one of those things. We tell them, hey, you need to think about what recommendations you want to provide your customers as part of your service. And then, then it's really just, honestly, in many cases, it's as easy as some sort of query against the service telemetry that identifies when a customer has an opportunity, and then, writing the text about what that recommendation would be. And that's all they have to do. And then we have the full engine to take that and then deliver that recommendation to customers and manage everything else. And so, in a sense, when you're building something like that for Azure, like part of my job is make it as easy as possible for all the Azure teams to do their part, because that's not really something they should have to worry about too much. We want them to be experts on their product and their customers, and then just make it super easy for them to use Advisor. So that's been super successful. We honestly haven't had any trouble getting people to understand that concept or get on board with it.
Yeah. And Scott, let's suppose the customer faces a problem that is not caught by Azure Advisor, right? Maybe something new or different. What are some of the tools that the customer can use in that case to dig into the problem, right? Because as much as I would like to call and hear someone like Evan on the other side, I'd rather not call support for some of these problems, right? I'd like to fix them myself. And so
Yeah.
what are some of these self-service tools that I could or customers can expect in Azure?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's to be philosophical for a moment. I don't think anyone ever wants to contact support because it means you can't figure something out. You need to know how to do something, or you ran into a problem. On the other hand, if you need help, you want support to be there for you. And so both those things are true. And then the other thing is, when we talk to customers, most of our customers will tell us, "Hey, look, I don't mind doing a little bit of work to see if I can figure out my own problem." Not always, sometimes things are so urgent that, they just want help right away, and we're good with that too. But most customers say, "Hey, look, I'm a technical person. I take pride in understanding the way my cloud platform works. I'm going to go search for the problem I'm having and seeing what help I can get." And so we try to embrace that and say, "Great, well, if that's your mindset, like, we want to help you and empower you and make that even better." And so there's a number of things we do, from engaging in community forums where we participate in the discussion that people are having in the community and maybe add some answers if it's something that maybe only someone at Microsoft might know, and contribute that back to the community. But another big thing that my team focuses a lot on is, when we know who you are, because you're in the Azure portal, we can actually use deeper intelligent troubleshooting tools and expose those to you and allow you to potentially use those tools to solve your own problem as well. So if folks are familiar with the Azure portal, you might have seen a phrase in the portal called diagnose and resolve. And so if, for example, you're looking at a virtual machine, you'll see on the menu there's an option to diagnose and resolve issues. And that's something that we have on virtually every Azure service. And what's on there is the set of diagnostic tools and personalized content that the service team thinks that you should use if you want to solve your own issue. And similar to how we were talking about with Advisor, my team, part of my job is to make sure that that's really easy for all the Azure service teams to add that type of information in. So they don't have to be experts on it, and they just have to be experts on their service and what problems customers might run into. And then, my team and our job is to make sure that customers can discover those and that they're super useful. And again, we don't spend a lot of time talking about that because, we just hope that it's there and that customers will discover it and that they'll find it useful. And by and large, I think they do. And, we're never done. We're also always improving those things every day and every week.
Yeah, you actually, something you said just sort of harked back, and I can't remember. We've known each other for a number of years now, Scott. And, I think when we first met, it was long enough ago that all of these teams were shipping their service, but they were also shipping things like, diagnosing tooling, and but all that, like, each service was different. And, if you go back far enough, Windows was different from SQL, and there was not a lot of commonality from that. You guys, as it's been interesting to watch as you guys have evolved. It's now a standard way for doing all of this. And now the service team just has to care about, like, they don't have to know that part. They just have to know the service. And so you guys actually end up working together better as a pair than you really were individually. As you guys look down the road, do you see that as a continued evolution of just making it easier and easier and easier? Or do you have, sort of a vision, something that, hey, you can't do today that you want to do better down the road?
Of course. And I think what I'd say is a couple things. Number one, what's most important is that in Azure we have a culture of quality, and that everyone in Azure understands that that's their job. That's not someone else's job. And so that's something that we've really been very successful at over the lifetime of Azure, is moving from a mindset that says, well, product support is someone else's problem, to now we really think that, gosh, every time a customer raises their hand and says, I need help with a problem, honestly, that's a failure for us. And we want to make sure that support interaction is very successful and customers are satisfied and they get back to work. And then on the other hand, we want to say, like, how can we make sure that never happens again? Right. And so if you think about, a product or a business at the scale of Microsoft, doing that at scale presents a number of really, really interesting problems. Because you really don't want humans to have to look after you want humans to take every support case, but humans that are trying to make the system better, you need to use analytics and data science to help point them to improvement opportunities. And so there's certainly lots of room for us to continue to innovate and explore there, and something that we're doing for our customers. But to your direct question of what's on the horizon, I would say really being more insightful about the top improvement opportunities for every service based on our customers' experience and support, and just making it really easy for our teams to get that information is something that we're thinking about right now.
Yeah, I think I sort of want to get ahead. This is in some ways, although you and I both live in this world of the broken, right? Sort of, and what you said is absolutely true, right? We're striving for that success. We're striving for customers to be. We know it doesn't happen perfect all the time, right? That we know that the world is real.
Yeah.
But that is I mean, like, I think your point about whenever we see a failure in the system, we both, in terms of that process or the tooling or whatever, it's a dual track. It's how do we fix whatever broke, from a service perspective. But I mean, we have, lots of long conversations as a broader team about, hey, this support case went sideways, or this, debugging issue went sideways. How do we make that never go sideways again? Right. As well. So it's sort of on both sides of that. And I again, because I know there will be people out here that will say, hey, I had this bad experience, earlier, but like, we care about that. We want to make it go away. We'll probably never make it go to zero, but we absolutely want to reduce that on it. And we think about that on a daily basis. And you guys do a ton of just sort of thinking about how do you make it easier to make those things go away?
Yeah, exactly. We say perfect every time because that is the aspiration and the customer expectation. You don't want to look at something like this as at the averages, because if you say on average I do pretty well, what that means is that you might have done really, really well in some cases, but you did poorly in some other cases. So we're always learning from when it doesn't go well, and it's not hard to find anecdotes of in real customer pain when we needed to do better. And so when I say perfect every time, that doesn't mean we're there yet, but it's our aspiration. And we do take every case that we don't perform as we would expect. We take that very seriously, and we learn from it.
Yeah, kind of going along, Scott, with this, talking about reducing the need for people to call support, maybe in some cases. Can you maybe provide some information to listeners who are like, okay, so maybe there's like a 0-day exploit, or there's something we're shutting down, or all these different things that are happening in the cloud, because things are changing all the time, right? But it might be something super important that's definitely going to affect my service. In the past, I've seen these bubble up as part of the resource itself, right? Like I log into the portal and I see this message about this thing, or I got an email or something like that. Is there a better way or anything like that where customers should be like, hey, you should subscribe to this thing, or you should turn this thing on, and then you won't miss those super important critical things that are definitely going to cause you an issue, kind of thing?
Great question. Well, the first thing I'd say is when you're in the Azure portal, if you look at the service status dashboard, there's a way for you to subscribe to alerts and notifications there. And we've tried to do a lot of work to encourage customers to do that, to make them aware of that option. But the key is, especially as your deployments on Azure get large, you want to configure which subscriptions, which regions, which types of services really matter to you, and make sure those alerts are configured, to wake you up in the middle of the night, and potentially integrating with your own incident system. And so that's the first thing I'd say, and that's probably the most important, because honestly, when there's an Azure issue that we know is going to impact you, we use our service help channel to communicate that to our customers.
Okay, Scott. So yeah, I have one quick question, and maybe you've hit on this already, but I'm just kind of curious. We talk about kind of an end-to-end experience from a support perspective. Obviously, like I'm familiar with things like Azure Security Center, where you can get kind of your secure score, and then you have Azure Advisor. You can set diagnostic settings. Like we obviously have that the page that talks about different service availabilities. So I'm kind of curious from your perspective, like what is the ideal end-to-end experience that a customer has, right? It's like, what do they do proactively versus what is your team kind of, where do you play a part in that? And then what are some of the ancillary teams? Like, does your team work directly with, the support, the team that's in Premier Support providing that actual ticketing system? I'm kind of curious just to understand from an end-to-end perspective where your team fits in, where the touch points are, and then kind of what an ideal experience would be from end-to-end for a customer. And that's the last question I'll have today, but.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Well, if we, break into that a little bit, this might be too ideal, but honestly, the ideal end-to-end experience for our customers is, that my job doesn't exist at Microsoft, that our customers don't have problems figuring out how to do something. And once they get it working, it stays working. That might sound a little, naive, but honestly, that is the ideal experience. And so anything that's step back from that is not ideal in some way. But then what we want to do is say, okay, it's not ideal that you have this problem, but now let's get you back to good as quickly and as painlessly as possible. And so you shouldn't have to think about that process. So if we can't reach that ideal, then let's take one step back and say, how can we make it as easy as possible for you to get the help you need from us? And frankly, for that to be easy for you, for it to be a seamless experience, and for you to feel good about it, for you to feel like we understand this was inconvenient to you. We understand there might have been an impact to your business. We understand there might have been an impact to your personal life. Maybe you're engaged in some problem solving in the middle of the night or on the weekend. And so we're always aware of that we're engaging with a customer who probably had something happen that's not ideal, and we're here to kind of help them get back to a good state. And then in terms of where does my team fit in? Azure is a big division of Microsoft, and Microsoft's a big company, and so there's lots of different teams. But what I'd say is, what I think about, all day, every day is the Azure customer experience. And I want that experience to be confidence inspiring. I want customers to trust that they've made a great decision for Azure. And I want that to be reinforced with them every day.
Yeah, and Scott, I have a last question, hopefully, for you. Now you explained how when you determine if there's a support case and you find a solution to it, it's something you build in back. You kind of take that and feed that back into your automated advisor, etc. But what about some of the problems that users are facing and are fixing themselves, right? Like I, as a user, sometimes will go to Azure and I'll fix a problem myself. And do you have any mechanism where those can be fed back into the product team, right, to your team? And so you can say, okay, here's a problem we never thought about, and the user fix it, and we can take it and improve upon it. Almost like an open source model for the support incidents that you face.
Yeah, that's a good idea. There's not a way, in the Azure portal today for you to do something like that. But what I would say is we're very active in our community forums. And so if our customers there are writing about a problem that they've had and that they've been able to solve and seem like maybe no one else was aware of the problem or the solution or both, that's something where, we have folks that are watching and listening for that stuff. And so that's probably what I'd recommend today. I do think it's an interesting idea. Maybe we can encourage more collaboration and community there in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was great, Scott. Thank you very much. This is sort of a side of the business, right, that we don't generally talk about publicly. Any other sort of last thoughts or comments that you want to leave the audience with?
Well, yeah, just first of all, thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be able to talk about the work that we do, and I work with a lot of really talented and passionate people here at Azure. And I guess if I had to leave your audience with something, I'd say, there's a sizable group of people within Azure who are working hard every day to make your experience across all the Azure services as effortless as possible. And whenever there is a problem, know that we are listening, we're watching, and we're building the systems to make sure not only are we learning from each of those interactions, but we are getting better at learning from them over time.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's absolutely the mantra that I hear you guys discuss internally. Sajid, Kendall, Kale, any last thoughts or questions?
No, thanks, Scott.
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott.
I've always had a good
on.
experience with support, so you guys are doing a great job.
That's the right answer, Sajid. That's the right answer. I'll send you your $20 later. Great. No, cool, Scott. We'll get some. If there's any links you want to put and a headshot, we'll get those on the site in the near future. We'll talk to everybody next week.
Thanks.
Thank you.